Craft. Craft never changes. Hello there, welcome back to the Metal Crafter. It's been a while since my last video, and today I wanted to show you how I made several elements from Fallout 3's waste disposal place. I got a new camera while I was working on this build, so you might notice the quality change during the process. So, with no time to waste, let's hit the table. As with previous Fallout 3 builds, let's take a look at some reference images from the game and identify main elements I would like to craft. I wanted for this scene to have individual elements I could use as a whole scenario or in a modular way and incorporate them to other scenes. Of course, the main actors here are the different pools of radioactive waste. There are different shapes and sizes, and including barrels or rocks. There are also mounds of barrels, and I definitely wanted to build one of those big truck crates that were used to transport the barrels. As with most of my builds, I'm using the good old MDF planks to work as the base and main structure, with different sizes and shapes. Nevertheless, I wanted for the pools to be as flattened as possible, so instead of using the MDF as base and making a containment border, I decided to cut out the inner parts, which I'll later on fill in with a 2-part resin to simulate the radioactive waste. I started by drawing the outer and inner borders of the pools in the MDF. Then with the jigsaw I recently got, I went outside and cut the inner and outer excess. I'll save the inner cut of MDF for later use on some of the pools. Using an awl, I make some lines on the MDF, especially around the pool, to simulate the parched dry earth. Painted the MDF with my favorite cappuccino brown and gave it a grey dry brush. Then gave it a black wash. To contain the resin while it cured, I glued a transparent plastic sheet below the MDF and used another piece of MDF just as a tray. I rechecked the reference images, and in this part the land is extra parched, so I added some white wash around the pool and a later white dry brush. I then went over the originally carved lines with a pencil. Wanted to add some depth to the waste in the pool, so I started by painting the inner part of the plastic sheet, around the border with a dark brown. Then used a swampy green for the rest of the pool. With a sponge, I blended the edges of the brown and green. I later thought the brown was too light, so repeated the process with black instead. Added some black wash around the outer edge, and repeated the blending process with the sponge. To help the resin have some color variation inside the pool, I used some bright green and painted random spots in the pool. Once dried, I gave the MDF a layer of decoupage glue to seal it off. I've casted several barrels to be used through this build. Originally, I molded a toy barrel from a car's kit from my son quite some time ago, and have been duplicating these barrels a lot. I'll be using them in full and also some cut versions. I painted them following the Fallout 3 color scheme. Tried some different layouts and then glued them to the plastic sheet so they don't move while I pour the resin. For this particular pool, I wanted to add a special element. I've got this old, half-painted and missing parts skeleton lying around in my working table for quite a while, so I thought it would look great as someone who fell in the waste pool. A poor worker, probably. So I glued it to the edge as if it was trying to get out and just died there. I noticed one of the green acrylic paints I used did not merge well with the resin, leaving some floating particles. But I really liked the effect as the radiation looked more alive, while other paints just mixed well. So I added both to the 2-pore resin and then poured it to fill the waste bowl. I used some plastic toy bricks and some MDF planks to add some weight while the resin cured to avoid the MDF structure from bending. Once dried, I added a small lunchbox next to the poor worker. Then cut out the excess of plastic sheet. For this bigger pool, I wanted to add some additional pieces of land inside the pool, so used some of the MDF leftovers. As before, carved some dried land lines. For the painting process though, I started with white instead, and then painted the outer edge with cappuccino brown, followed with a black wash and went over the carved lines with a dark pencil. Then again, glued the MDF structure to a transparent plastic sheet. Added some depth inside the pool with black around the inner edge, and then painted with both previous screens. Placed and glued the barrels and then again filled the pool with the resin. Used a small toothpick to get rid of some bubbles. And then left it to cure as before. I used one of the small MDF leftovers and gave it a paint job as with the pools. Then trying some barrels I'll use in this map. I prepared a mix of PVA, water, gray paint and some cat litter. Then covered the MDF base with some construction plaster and placed the barrels. Added the rocks mix on top. Painted the barrels and the dry land. Then added some black wash to the entire mound. I originally did not want to add waste to the mound, but eventually changed my mind and dropped some on top, which flowed between the small rocks with a cool effect. Here trying a way smaller pool with the same techniques. Finally, I started with the big trucks crate and drew some blueprints by checking on the reference images. Then cut several sheets of foam around 5mm wide and started cutting and gluing all pieces. Also used some chipboard for the crate's structure. Made the back door movable using some toothpicks. Painted the entire crate black and then gave it a rust effect using bright and light browns and using a sponge and dry brush. Alright, let's check all of our elements out there in the wasteland. I like this build because I got to try new techniques and tools, and the end result was pretty good. Also because the elements are really modular. The waste balls are found everywhere, not just in the disposal place, as well as those trucks crates. So you can use them in any scenario. I hope that you enjoy the video and get to craft your own elements. Drop some comments and hit the like button if you did. Remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for future presentations. Join the rest of the social media groups for further pictures, comments, and announcements. I'll see you in the next craft.